If there is one coaster that commands the skyline of Gurnee, Illinois, it would be Raging Bull. Coming up I-94, you can't help but notice the bright orange track welcoming you to Six Flags Great America. Opening in 1999, this hypercoaster would be the tallest roller coaster in the park. Raging Bull was built with a unique twister style layout, much different than the standard out and back layout. Some say the twister style makes it the worst hyper due to the lack of airtime, while others treasure its unique set of elements. In this video, I will give you my full in-depth review of the ride and answer the question, is Raging Bull the worst hypercoaster? Find out next. Hey everyone, this is Cullah Hale from Destination Thrills, and I'm here with another coaster review. And in today's review, we will be looking at Raging Bull at Six Flags Great America. Now, what I like to do with my reviews is provide some stats and some fun facts about the ride. Then I will go over the layout element by element, explaining the experience of each moment. Then I will close the review, giving you my ratings on the ride and answering the question, is Raging Bull the worst hyper coaster? So let's talk about the coaster stats. Raging Bull was built in 1999 by Bollinger and Mabillard. The ride is 202 feet tall, and thanks to the tunnel, it features a drop of 208 feet. The coaster reaches a top speed of 73 miles per hour and has a track length of over 5,000 feet, which gives you a lot of ride time. Raging Bull is one of 15 operating roller coasters at Six Flags Great America, which has a fantastic collection of thrill machines. If you haven't checked it out yet, I have done a video picking my top 10 roller coasters at the park. I will link that in the card above. Now, my first ride on Raging Bull was back in 2009, well before Destination Thrills was a thing. Honestly, it feels like it was yesterday though. I was 18 then and had just got over my fear of roller coasters a few years prior. Now, up until then, the only theme park I had been to was Six Flags St. Louis. So at that time, I had never been on a roller coaster over 200 feet tall. So needless to say, when I got in line for Raging Bull, I was really nervous. Of course, it was midsummer, so the wait time was almost an hour long, and the whole time I was trying not to seem terrified in front of my friends. When you are just sitting there in the queue looking up at this thing, you start thinking of all the things that could go wrong that high up in the air. But I wasn't about to back down. So when we got in the ride, the worst part was the lift hill. Knowing that you can't turn back and looking around as you go higher and higher. But after the drop, all the adrenaline kicked in and I was on a rush and it was fantastic. I left that day with a new #1 coaster. Now, since then, I've ridden coasters much taller like Millennium Force and Top Thrill Dragster. I've also ridden other hypercoasters like Diamondback and Nitro, and honestly, Raging Bull is just so much different from these rides. So let me explain as we go through the layout. As I mentioned, Raging Bull has a long lift hill. It feels like forever getting to the top. For those afraid to ride, this will be a real killer as the anticipation starts eating you alive. Now, after a dozen laps, the lift hill is actually very relaxing and a good chance to get some fantastic views of the park. Then there's the drop. This is by far my favorite drop on a hyper coaster, and that is because there is this mini pre-drop before the large drop. This gives the train so much momentum into that over 200-foot plunge. For riders in the back row, two amazing sensations occur. First of all, if you are not paying attention in line, like most of the general public, you can't see the pre-drop coming. So the first mini hill fakes you out as you think this is the main drop. Then when you finally do hit that main drop, you get some insane floater and even ejector airtime. It feels absolutely amazing, and this is definitely my favorite moment of Raging Bull. Now, this drop takes you into a tiny tunnel. Honestly, you're going so fast you hardly notice it as you race by. You then go into the turnaround. Nothing intense here, just the sensation of being really high above the ground. You then return back to Earth with some great speed and into a large camelback. This camelback is the most disappointing part of the ride. Especially if you have been on other B&M hypers, you will be expecting that floating, zero gravity feeling, but because of the trims, you get little to no airtime. In rare cases, if the trims don't hit you that hard, you can get some decent airtime, but most of the time the trim brakes will slow you down, keeping you from experiencing airtime. The next few elements are paced really slow. You have a dive turn and then a 180-degree turnaround. I find this part to be fun, but it doesn't really give you that intensity that thrill seekers desire. You then ascend upward and turn right into the brake run. And now it's time for the second half of the ride, which is honestly much better than the first half. You start out with an airtime filled drop and then into a small camelback with another dose of floater air. This is the only part of Raging Bull that gives you the standard hypercoaster feel. You then make a right turn into another small drop with some good floater as well. Honestly, there is more airtime in this drop than the giant camelback in the first half of the ride. After this drop, you race really close to the ground and make a quick bank turn to the left and then a quick turn to the right. These turns have a nice whip to them, as the pacing picks up a bit. It is nowhere close to the twisted turns on Maverick, but something that I am not used to on other B&Ms. This moment also has some strong positive Gs that plaster you to your seat. Then there is another small drop with another slight pop of airtime, and then another strong positive G moment as you turn left into the final brake run. This ends your very long journey on Raging Bull. So what are my ratings of this B&M hypercoaster? If this is your first time watching my reviews, I will be rating Raging Bull on 5 specific categories on a 0 to 5 scale, with 0 being awful and 5 being excellent. Then I will give you my final overall rating on the same scale. Alright, let's start out with my first rating, and that is intensity. Raging Bull looks a lot more intimidating than it actually is. The first drop is probably the most intense moment, and there are several strong positive G moments in the second half as well, but with a hypercoaster, it is really disappointing that there is a lack of strong floater air. I would also say that the coaster does a lot of meandering around in the first half, so the pacing doesn't really give you that intense coaster ride. So I'm gonna go middle of the ground and give intensity a 3 out of 5 rating. If it wasn't for the crazy first drop, I would probably say 2 out of 5. Now, let's discuss my fun rating. B&M Hypers are really fun rides. They have a very open feel due to the clamshell restraints, so you just feel like you are flying through the air. It's really an exciting feeling. Raging Bull has several of those moments where you gracefully glide and turn above the ground, so although this kind of hurts the ride's intensity, it still has a fun sensation that I enjoy. Also, the variety of the layout, going from those high, graceful soaring moments to the low to the ground twists and turns, really keeps you from getting bored of the layout, which is something I felt on Diamondback after riding it 7 times in a row. So I would say that Raging Bull is a fun coaster and earns a 4.5 rating in this category. Let's move on to uniqueness. Raging Bull is the most unique B&M Hyper in the US. The layout is completely different from the out and back style we have become accustomed to with this coaster model. Yes, this is the reason why there is a lack of airtime moments, but it means that you won't get the same experience as a Diamondback or a Nitro. This is one of the reasons I really enjoy Raging Bull, and is why I'm giving the unique rating a 4.5 out of 5. Alright, moving on to comfort, I love the B&M Hypercoaster model. The clamshell restraints are so comfortable. You almost don't even notice that they're there. As I mentioned earlier, they are also very open, so you really have nothing banging against you while you are riding the ride. Also, the track is very smooth. I haven't noticed a rattle that you sometimes find on other B&M roller coasters. So, Raging Bull is a very pleasant ride, and is why I am giving it a perfect score of 5 out of 5 for comfort. Next is duration, and Raging Bull has perfected duration. Even excluding the long trip up the lift hill, the ride gives you so much time out on the track, making those long wait times well worth it. There are so many elements that it truly is the most fulfilling coaster in the park, especially compared to Goliath and Max Force. So without a doubt, Raging Bull deserves a 5 out of 5 for duration. Finally, let's talk about my overall rating of Raging Bull. As mentioned, Raging Bull is comfortable, unique, and has a fantastic duration. Also, the ride is just plain fun. Yes, it does lack the extreme maneuvers and strong airtime us coaster enthusiasts love about roller coasters, but sometimes it is nice to have a coaster to ride in the park that doesn't beat you up. A coaster that you can get all the thrills of speed and height without taking a toll on your body. Of course, I will never say no to a coaster that has all those crazy maneuvers, but I think Raging Bull is a refreshing distinction from the rest of the B&M Hypers out there. Yes, Raging Bull is the lowest ranked out of the 3 B&M Hypers I have ridden, but the ride is still in my top 20 coasters that I have been on. Therefore, I'm giving Raging Bull a 4 out of 5 overall rating. So is Raging Bull the worst Hyper? No, I prefer Raging Bull much more than the Morgan Hyper Mamba at Worlds of Fun. Now, out of the B&M Hyper specifically, this might be the case, but I need to ride more B&M Hypers to say this for certain. So, this is my review of Raging Bull at Six Flags Great America. Now I want to hear from you. What are your thoughts of this one-of-a-kind Hyper? Let me know in the comments below. Also, I have many more coaster reviews on my channel. If you would like to check them out, I will leave a link to the playlist in the description below. This includes other Great America coasters like Goliath, and the new for 2019, Max Force. Thank you all for watching this video. Don't forget to subscribe to Destination Thrills, the destination for all the latest theme park news, coaster reviews, and content. I am Cullah Hale. Have a good one.